Hey guys, this is Mike and welcome to the podcast. Today's guest is Tonya Bakritzes, Managing Director of S2G, one of the biggest venture capitalists in the future food and food tech space. They invest in farm tech, alternative proteins, and all the themes that we write about at The Spoon. So I always enjoy talking to Tonya, and so I thought I'd catch up with her as we wind up 2022 and kind of wrap up what we saw this year. We talk about the big happenings in alternative proteins and what we saw over the past year, and Tonya has some great insights, and so I hope you enjoy it. If you want to meet Tonya in person, I'm sure she will be at the CS Food Tech event in Las Vegas on January 5th, so you can meet her there. And I hope to see you there as well. I will be there, and I will be up on stage, but also walking around, and if you are going, I'd love to meet you as well. So I hope to see you in Las Vegas in just a couple weeks. All right, that's it for now. Let's get to my conversation with Tonya. Tonya, we've been knowing each other for a couple of years now. Tonya Bakritzes with S2G, which is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, investors in the broader world of food innovation, ag tech, etc. And you're a managing director there.
I am. And it's a thrill to be here, Mike. I have really enjoyed getting to know you and The Spoon over the last couple of years as we did CES together last year. Looking forward to seeing you there again this year. So it's been a nice journey and an honor to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Can you believe it's been like a year ago almost that we're sitting like on the show floor in the midst of an Omicron wave. And even though not everyone went to CS, I think the right people went to CS, and that was a lot of fun having those conversations.
I agree.
Because we're like a year out from that almost, 2022 is pretty much in the rearview mirror. I think it's safe to say we can do a year-end look back on some of the things that we saw. And like I said, I couldn't think of a better person have here with me to do that. But before we get into all that, to give everyone a little bit of familiarity, tell us more about S2G. What do you guys do?
Yeah, I would love to do that. Thanks for teeing that up. So S2G is an investor in food and agriculture, oceans, and energy markets. We invest behind entrepreneurs who are really looking to solve some of the world's greatest problems. So we have, within the food space, we've been doing this for 9 years now. So we have a portfolio of about 70 companies, really spanning all the way across the food system from soil to shelf, but really all with the ambition to create innovations that make our food system healthier or more sustainable. So we're really excited about, a lot of great momentum that's happened this year across the food system. Lots of challenges, but lots of progress. So excited to dig into that with you today.
Whenever I look at the Good Food Institute's data, you guys are always near the top in terms of alternative protein investments. You guys, Big Idea Ventures. So you're certainly one of the biggest and most active investors in the space. So I want to talk about a lot of that. But before we get into some of the things and investment themes, let's talk about the macro environment, because I think there was a lot of things happening. I mean, we kind of maybe could have predicted it if we looked into the crystal ball, that we'd see some instability in Europe with the war. I think inflation had started to rear its ugly head a little bit at the end of last year. But all those things, I think, had a big impact on how people view the food system.
Huge impact. I think just looking back again to us being on the show floor last year at CES, we were still in the midst of COVID, right? So there's been a huge shift this year of people coming back to work, coming back to in-person experiences. And I think we've really seen a shift from, still e-commerce and digital is important, but a lot more back to retail. You mentioned supply chain challenges. Certainly that's been exacerbated by Russia's invasion of Ukraine and had really big implications for the food system from farmers to consumers. So I think, there's been a lot that's happened this year that really has put pressure on companies all across the food supply chain. And as a result of, inflation and a lot of the dynamics of the economy, there's a new startups are facing a different environment when it comes to raising funds. So we're really, seeing a shift there that's going to affect companies as they go into the new year.
It's like so many of these world headwinds that are causing people to have doubts about whether to invest and telling them to be more cautious are many of the same reasons when we look at the food system, we think, hey, we need to rethink how we do our food if we want to feed all those people, et cetera. So it's kind of a contradiction in a sense.
That's right. Yeah, I would agree. We're really seeing a push towards, how do we localize our food system? How do we make it more resilient? How do we look for solutions that are both cost effective, but also good for people and planet? So I think we'll see those themes continue through the new year.
So if we start looking at like some of the specific actions and things that happened that were newsworthy this year, I think one of them was governments, nation states decided that they did need to get more involved in the food system to catalyze change. In particular, we saw that in the U.S., which the U.S. government tends to be really slow moving just because there's so much division and things just get in a state of paralysis. But we did finally have, for the first time, in I think ever, a food conference at the White House. I think that raised the profile a little bit of a lot of things.
Yeah, that's so true. I feel like from our perspective, that was a really big moment this year. I think when we think about the food system and healthier people, one theme that we've been really excited about and continue to be is just this intersection of food and health, and really even into medicine and healthcare. And I think, this White House conference was a big deal. It was the first since 1969. So in 50 years, they had not convened in this way. And I think, seeing investors, government, companies big and small really coming together around this issue of hunger and nutrition and how to bring forth innovation at scale to really resolve a lot of problems that we're facing in our human health population was exciting. And I think from our standpoint, we really leaned in and have put together this coalition of investors called the Food, Nutrition, and Health Investors Coalition. And those 20 investors have committed $2.5 billion over the next 3 years to invest in startups that are looking to reduce hunger and improve health outcomes through food. So we're really excited about that. I think we're going to see a lot more change and innovation in this space in the coming year.
That coalition, was that something that S2G led on and you brought together the others?
We partnered with Food Systems for the Future to bring together this coalition and launch. Yeah, that's right. And I think, being on site, we had our managing director there in person and really seeing sort of the discussions and the dynamic that went on. I think we felt, left feeling very invigorated. And, I think we're seeing already some changes come in place. I don't know if you saw the news around some of the nutrition and labeling changes that have come out. So I think there's a lot more discussion about sugar and what it means to be healthy. And we're starting to see those things come to market. On the innovation side, though, I think there's also a lot of great stuff going on. We this year invested in a company as one example called Faith Therapeutics, which is really looking at how can we use very precision focused, food plans as a counterpart to other cancer treatments to really tweak metabolism to sort of essentially starve cancer cells. It's things like that where we're really getting specific about how food can be used to treat diseases that I think is just so exciting and has so much potential for people around the world. So we're really excited about that as well.
Yeah, you guys are there early, I think, on this idea of using science to and think about food in a healthcare context to achieve better outcomes. And that space, that intersection of food meets healthcare, food as medicine, has definitely picked up momentum, I think, in the last couple of years. And you guys have you have a few companies in your portfolio.
We do. Yeah, I believe you had Lauren Driscoll on the podcast earlier this year, and she's looking at it in a bit different way in the sense of how can you partner with health plans to provide specialized food and meal kits and really education to members who are, facing chronic diet-related chronic diseases and help them sort of mitigate through their conditions. So I think there's just, so many different avenues we can take to really help both with population human health, like broad scale, just healthier eating to drive food, good health outcomes, but also very targeted treatment of disease. And one thing that I think is really enabling all of this is the use of, technologies like artificial intelligence to help us really understand food in a way that we never did before, and fungi kingdoms. One of our companies, Brightseed, is really focused on mapping the plant kingdom, if you will, to understand the bioactives that are out there and how those can actually map to very specific health outcomes. So the last statistic I heard was that they've mapped about 2 million different bioactives and how those react in the human body. And their target is to get to 10 million, which I think really just unlocks this greater understanding of how we can use that information in different ways to drive health outcomes.
Yeah, I think AI, ML discovery platforms, we've just seen those flourish in a way in food, and we're seeing big food companies embrace that. You've seen companies like Shiru, which is building out a huge database. We've seen others like Kingdom Supercultures. Yep. And I just think that particular drive in terms of a technology trend, I think is going to continue to be more and more important.
I totally agree with you. And I think, we've seen a bit of pullback in the plant-based meat sector and, slower than expected growth. And maybe, one of the things that we're seeing about that is, a little bit of a decrease in repeat purchases. And we attribute that to consumers are just really wanting a little bit more from those products, whether that be taste or mouthfeel or, the nutrition labels. And I think, to your point, companies like Shiru are really offering, using these platforms to offer great alternatives for ingredients that can help bring that market forward, whether that be, replacing ingredients that are less than ideal with ones that are healthier and more sustainable, or really looking at ingredients that have better performance for the end product.
You teed up that subject. As long as we're looking back at 2022, that has to be one of the biggest stories, I think, this year, is at least in the world of future food, the current struggles of some of the players in the space. And there's been a lot of think pieces coming out about, hey, do we need to think about a complete rebranding of plant-based meat? Do we need to kind of come up with new alternatives? And I think you hit on some of the right things. I think a lot of consumers tried it and they didn't necessarily come back. Some of the folks, maybe were not quite feeling it with the mouthfeel or the taste. But I think most of us are still bullish long-term, but I do think that there's been a lot of soul searching in the space.
I would agree. I think we still see an openness from consumers to try new alternatives and really a desire for them. I think with the innovation and ingredient innovation that's coming out, I think we're going to see a step change in the market to these being much more desirable for consumers in the future.
So I look back at my 2022 predictions, and a couple of them were along the lines of what was happening or what I saw would happen in plant-based. One of them was we would see more innovation or move towards whole cuts. And I think we're starting to see that to a certain degree. And also more fungi-based meat alternatives, which I think that's continuing to happen. I think, you've seen the folks like Nature's Find, Mycotechnologies, and some of these others are bringing out interesting new meat alternatives that are pretty close in terms of taste and mouthfeel, super high in protein. And I think these products are just starting to make their way to market.
Totally agree. Yeah, that's something we're really excited about as well. So I look to see more of that in the future. And I think those fungi-based meat alternatives will only continue to grow. We've seen even some interest globally where some countries are looking at that as a way to sort of lean into food security, where they don't have the land to have ranches or produce food in the same way that we do here. And that offers really a food security solution too, where they can use ingredients that would have otherwise gone to waste as the input for some of these exciting new proteins that places like Myco can now produce.
So while we're just talking about the whole span of alternative proteins, where is S2G on insect protein? Because I know that I keep getting pitches on this. I still don't know what I think about it in terms of North American products. I do think it's a great potential alternative for animal feed, but it does seem like it might have some headwinds in the U.S. market, but maybe not in other markets. Where is S2G on that?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So we have seen more of that. We think it is interesting. We have not announced any investments in that space yet, but we're very interested to see how that plays out in the alternative feed sector specifically.
While we're talking about this, we might as well talk about cellular
big
agriculture.
News recently, right?
Yeah, there was the recent news. I guess the other big tectonic shift story, I think, in the space is the approval by the FDA of Upsides. And I knew it was going to be Upside or it's going to be Eat Just or one of those guys. And Upside really has they made all the right steps. And so that announcement by them that the FDA had determined their meat safe was a big deal.
Yeah, huge deal for the industry. I think we're really excited about what this can, unlock and help, push momentum behind, processes that other cultivated meat companies are also going to have to go through. And I think that coupled with Singapore really making that approved to come to market, I think there's some tailwinds there that are really exciting. I think just to say, I think going forward now, it's exciting to see how do we get to commercially viable price points, and we're starting to see companies get there. One of our investments is Believer Meats. They were previously called Future Meat Technologies. I don't know if you know them, but they've this year announced they've driven down the cost of lab-grown chicken to commercially viable price point. And now they are really looking to lean into scaling in North America. Actually, just, I believe yesterday or today, they announced they're opening the world's largest cultivated meat processing facility here in the U.S. So I think we'll start to see more of that, scaling investment happen over the next year.
How do you see this stuff rolling out over the next couple of years?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, time will tell, but I think, as we look at our thesis in this space, we very much take a yes and, viewpoint, and that we need multiple solutions here to move us forward to a future where it's healthier, more sustainable, and we're still feeding a very growing population. I think that's another stat that happened this year, right? We reached 8 billion of us humans here on the planet. So I think as we look at this, we very much see this as a partnership of multiple ways of producing that need to be, in the mix going forward.
And with regards to the cellular agriculture side of things, are you guys looking at that in its entirety beyond just consumer-facing products? Are you looking at infrastructure? Are you looking at platforms and ingredient components?
Yeah, so we actually this year we launched what we call Special Opportunities Fund, which is a different investment vehicle that gives us the opportunity to invest in infrastructure, production facilities, debt facilities, and just different flexible ways to help move our companies forward as they look to scale. We haven't made any investment specifically in scaling for cultivated meat, but that type of investment across the food system we recognize is going to become more and more important as a lot of these new innovations come to market.
One of the things that we write a lot about here at The Spoon is food waste and how we need to apply technology to help us waste less food, just because so much food goes into compost, goes into the garbage. And if we could just stop a lot of that, I think we can solve some of the problems. And so you guys, I think, maybe have had some investments that are aligned in that regard?
We do for sure. And actually, I think, this one, I feel like just from a customer and media interest has gotten a lot of buzz this year. Like, I think people are more aware of, managing their food waste or thinking about ways to avoid it. And maybe it's because prices are rising and consumers are even more feeling the effects of, food prices. But we've invested in a couple different ways of looking at that, more from the supply chain side. We're investors in Hazel Technologies. So they really provide a sachet, if you will, that is transported along with produce as it's shipped to the retailer, and it offsets slows down the
it's a life extension product, essentially.
Thank you. Yes. Life extension product. So the food just sort of lasts longer. And then on the other flip side of it, we've invested in a company called Flash Foods, which is really a digital marketplace. And their aim is to work with retailers to help them sell food that was sort of nearing the expiration date at a discount, and connect consumers to those offers in a way that's like really mutually beneficial to both the retailer, who then now doesn't have to pay to get rid of that food and still gets some, income from that food that would have otherwise gone to waste, to consumers who are now getting really great produce at a discount. So we're really excited about those ideas of how can we help both sides of the supply chain, and especially consumers, when we're all feeling the effects of these higher prices coming into the new year.
Yeah, I feel like these two-sided marketplaces are no-brainers if we can find ways to put these foods in the hands of consumers that are looking for a good deal, and there's no reason why not to give them a good deal, either from the grocery store or like P2P type of solutions like Olio.
And I think it can scale quickly. I mean, Flash Food this year announced they've offsetted, I think, 50 million pounds of food waste that would have normally gone to the landfill. So it's really exciting to see, the impact that can happen pretty quickly.
Let's talk about ag tech. I know that's one of your key focus areas. What are some of the areas and investments you've made there? Yeah,
we have looked at this from a number of different ways. And if we think about what's happened this year, consumers are feeling the price inflation, but so are farmers, right? With the situation and Russia's invasion of Ukraine, fertilizer prices spiked really high. So we've seen, farmers really being open more than ever to like alternatives to fertilizer. We have a company called Sound Agriculture that we're really excited about. They have a chemical-based product which helps the plants sort of absorb the nitrogen in a way that is much more sustainable and cost effective for farmers without an additional burden for them to have to apply in different ways. That to biologicals, which are just different, more sustainable inputs that farmers can explore. I think on the sort of technology side, I think, as farmers start to explore more sustainable farming solutions, and as companies and, those looking to make ESG claims want more metrics from, understanding how food is grown, we've really seen a push towards digital ag tech solutions. So everything from, sensors and IoT on the field that help farmers just really understand their operations and optimize those in ways that, are becoming more and more sophisticated. I think robotics is a continued trend. I think, the labor challenges for growers are not subsiding. So I think we'll see a continued push there. We've invested in a couple different things on the robotics side. We have a company in our portfolio called Burrow, which is currently works in specialty produce and assists the growers with transporting product after it's been picked to its centralized location, just really eliminating, not replacing laborers on the farm, but really making their work so much easier. So they're not running back and forth and, transporting the product from one place to another all day. I think, we've done a lot in the digital ag tech space. So that's one thing I'm really excited to see at CES actually, is what are some of the global innovations that will be showcased on the show floor. So. Yeah,
Burrow's a cool one. I kind of consider them like a robotic beast of burden in a sense. We've also seen like a lot of the tractor companies, at least making noise. Obviously, John Deere had a big splash, a last CES thing they're coming out with their robotic tractor. There's been a couple others coming out. There have been robotic tractors out there, but we're starting to see even more evolved ones, like electric ones that are driver optional. So I have to wonder, or have to ask you, how amenable are the farmers? How open are the farmers to this? Maybe it's different to like big and kind of commercial farms versus like the smaller farmer. Are you seeing like a lot of them are open to the idea of like, hey, let's use robotic tractors or robotics on the farm?
For sure. We've actually seen and heard from our partners who work very closely with growers and our, own growers in our network that this is like adoption has really increased rapidly this year. I think farm owners need the labor to do the work, and that's been a challenge. I think they are increasingly, we're seeing, a lot of the robotics companies have a growing wait list and, large operations ordering more than one robot. So I think, the trend is there. That's positive, for that. I think, farmers have a lot to take care of, right? It's a startup in and of itself with looking at all the factors of any other business. So I think they're going to be increasingly, focused on ROI and what are the, areas of robotics that have the highest return. I think one thing that's also interesting is thinking about, a lot of those robots and, depending on what application it is, they're going up and down the field like multiple times, right? So there's a lot of data that could be captured as that is happening. So I think this intersection of robotics, but then also the digital ad tech is going to be something to watch in the future, and how that all comes together in sort of one platform for farmers to really have a fuller view of their operations.
The biggest barriers to the embrace of automation to farmers, is it the cost? Is it just changing processes and training employees? What do you see as kind of the biggest hurdle there?
Yeah, I think it's a number of things. I think one, farmers are, they have a tough job, right? I think they are constantly looking at the yield of their farms. They only have a certain number of grow seasons to really make change and test and learn, right? So it's not an agile environment like software where you quickly see the results of your investment. So I think they just, by the nature of the work, have to be, very careful with what they invest in and very assured that there is going to be an ROI. I think there's also been an explosion of these technologies, right? So they're hearing about all sorts of different things, right, and they need to really kind of wade through what's going to be the biggest return. I will say, I think, farmers are also an aging cohort, right? So as we see younger farmers come into the mix who are a little bit more open to digital ag tech, open to robotics, I think that will continue to propel this forward.
I don't know if you guys have any controlled environment agriculture or vertical farming in your portfolio. It seems like that space has had some success stories, but it's also seeing some of the providers struggle. It strikes me as if some of the reasons for the struggle is a lot of these build outs are high CapEx. You're going to build like a 30-acre farm with a lot of robotics across it. Some of these companies are using, $30, $40, $50 million to do the build out, which I think that's maybe part of the problem because we're entering like a time which is harder to raise capital, which may be resulting in some of these guys struggling. What's the secret to success there? Is that a high CapEx area, and is that going to be a problem going forward?
It is a high CapEx area. I think we're still pretty excited about a lot of the companies in this cohort who many have been successful, but also like the technologies and, as we say, picks and shovels behind vertical farming. So we're really, looking forward to seeing hopefully the tide turn on this and them starting to reach the scale where we can get to efficient, sort of at cost results for the indoor growing.
All right. So we're just less than a month out from going back to Vegas. I always like to go there after the holidays and get sensory overload and see folks like yourself, Tonya. And also, of course, see all the cool innovation. What are you excited about seeing at CES with regards to food tech and ag tech and all the different things we're interested in?
So many things. First of all, super excited to be there for your food tech track programming. I think looks like a great lineup. Also, just like great networking in the room. Last year was a great cohort of, investors, startups, big companies. And I think that smaller convening inside the big show is always something to look forward to. So looking forward to that. I am excited to see more ag tech. So John Deere, as you know, their chairman and CEO, John May, is participating in the keynote, which is a first for CES. So interested to see what he has to say and what they'll be unveiling, and just sort of to mine the show floor and see what other climate smart ag innovations are going to be on display. And then with like our intersection with food is health, we're going to lean into the digital health component as well and really look at what are some of the monitoring technologies that can help our companies as they're thinking about taking their consumers through a food journey towards better health. One last one. I was interested to see CES added an environment and sustainability track. So I think that was new, and at least for me. So we'll be going to check out what that means, and I'd be curious to see where CES takes that in the future.
Yeah, I think those are
What are you excited about?
Well, lots of things. Of course, I'm a cooking tech nerd. So any cooking gadgets. I'm excited to see the advancement of humanless or contactless retail solutions. I'm looking to see more automation meets ag solutions. I think, like you said, John Deere being kind of keynoting, that's pretty cool. Who knows? Maybe they'll have the tractor they're rolling around. We can get a ride on it or something. So I think there's going to be tons of exciting things, and I'm excited to have you guys involved. Where can people find out more about S2G?
Oh, yeah. So you can find us on our website at www.s2gventures.com.
Awesome. All right, Tonya, we'll see you in Vegas.
Sounds good. See you there.
All right. I enjoyed my conversation with Tonya. I hope you enjoyed it as well. Here at The Spoon, we might be taking it a little slow over the next week or two as we enjoy the holidays. I hope you enjoy the holidays as well, and we get ready for CES. We'll talk to you soon.